In the spring of 1980, the Pacific Northwest was home to one of nature's most beautiful wonders, Mount St. Helens. Called the Mount Fuji of America, it was a postcard come to life. Tourists flocked to its slopes, families camped along the lakes, and loggers worked in the forests at its base. To most people, it was just a mountain, silent, harmless, eternal. But to geologists, it was a sleeping giant, one with a violent history, and in March of 1980, the giant began to stir. It started small, an earthquake, then another, and then hundreds. The ground shuddered, steam and ash hissed from the new cracks in the earth, and on the mountain's northern flank, something terrifying was taking place. The mountain was swelling, bulging outward like an inflating balloon, straining to hold back an unimaginable amount of pressure. Warnings were issued, danger zones were declared, but some ignored them, some refused to leave, and others laughed at the scientists, certain that the mountain would never betray them. They were wrong. Welcome back to Nightmare Situations. If you enjoyed the story I've got for you tonight, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe. On May 18th, 1980, at 8:32 AM, the nightmare arrived. A mountain exploded, the sky went dark, and 57 lives were lost. America witnessed its deadliest volcanic eruption in history. This is the story of that day. The science, the chaos, the people who survived, and the ones who didn't. This is the story of the Mount St. Helens volcanic eruption. Mount St. Helens was called the Mount Fuji of America. A symmetrical cone, its reflection simmering in Spirit Lake, beloved by campers, loggers, and climbers. To most people, it was just a mountain, a backdrop for photos, and a place to relax. But geologists knew its past. This was not a dead volcano. It had erupted dozens of times in the past 4,000 years. Then came March 20th, 1980. At 3:45 in the afternoon, the ground shook with a 4.2 magnitude earthquake. Small, but the beginning of something much larger. By April, the mountain was groaning constantly, shaken by hundreds of tremors each day. And then, something no one had seen before. A bulge. A massive swelling on the north flank. It grew at a rate of 5 feet per day, as if the entire mountain was inflating, straining, ready to explode. Scientists warned the government this was not normal. The pressure building inside Mount St. Helens was catastrophic in scale, and yet, people continued to treat the mountain like it was a tourist attraction. No one truly grasped the nightmare that was coming. By early April, the mountain was alive. Explosions blasted open craters at the summit. Ash drifted across towns, coating cars and homes in a grey film. Authorities established red zones and blue zones, danger areas where entry was restricted. But boundaries mean nothing when there's money at stake. Logging companies pushed to keep their workers in, tourists demanded access, and residents didn't want to abandon their homes. The mountain became a battlefield, not yet with lava, but with politics, stubbornness, and disbelief. One man captured the public's imagination, Harry R. Truman. Owner of the Spirit Lake Lodge, 83 years old, gruff, and surrounded by his 16 cats. He became the face of defiance. Reporters asked if he would leave. He laughed, and he said, "That mountain and I were friends. She wouldn't hurt me." He gave interviews, drank whiskey, and told the world that he was not afraid. To many, he was charming, a folk hero, but to the scientists, he was a tragic warning sign of human arrogance in the face of nature. Sunday morning, May 18th, 1980. The air was clear. The mountains stood silent. It was 8:32 a.m. And then, the nightmare began.
Off of the west slope, now we got a whole great big eruption out of the crater. And we got another that opened up on the west side, and the whole west side, northwest side is sliced down. Keep going, Jerry.
A 5.1 earthquake ripped beneath the volcano. The swollen north flank completely gave way, collapsing in the largest landslide ever recorded on Earth. Imagine an entire mountainside, billions of tons of rock, sliding in seconds. The collapse uncorked the volcano's core. The result? A lateral blast. Not an upward eruption, but a sideways explosion. Faster than sound and hotter than fire. The blast wave travelled at more than 600 miles per hour. Whole forests were flattened in a heartbeat. 230 square miles of trees were levelled like matchsticks. Temperatures soared to over 660 degrees Fahrenheit. Anyone in the path simply ceased to exist. The sky turned black. An ash column 15 miles high roared into the atmosphere, spreading darkness across 11 states. The sun disappeared. Towns went silent, buried in a choking grey. People drove with headlights at noon, gasping for air, afraid they'd never see the sky again. In less than 15 minutes, paradise had become an apocalypse. 57 people lost their lives, some instantly, some buried in the ash. Harry Truman, the folk hero, was entombed beneath 150 feet of volcanic debris. Spirit Lake, his beloved home, was erased. Photographer Reed Blackburn, camping on an assignment for National Geographic, was caught in the blast. His camera melted alongside him. And David Johnston, a young scientist who had spent weeks monitoring the danger, called in a final radio message. Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it. Moments later, he was gone. But others lived. A logger named Brian Thomas was blown half a mile by the blast and somehow survived, walking under a tangle of fallen trees. Scientist Don Swanson narrowly escaped by sheer luck, leaving a monitoring post just hours before the eruption. These stories blur the line between tragedy and miracle. In a disaster this vast, survival doesn't come down to preparation, it comes down to pure chance. The aftermath of the eruption left pure devastation. The eruption itself released energy equal to 24 megatons of TNT. That's more than 1.5 times the Hiroshima bomb. Entire ecosystems were erased. Spirit Lake was gone. Rivers were clogged with mud flows and melted snow, flooding towns downstream. Ash blanketed crops, farmland, and highways. Thousands of animals died instantly. The mountain itself shrank, from 9,677 feet tall to just 8,363. Its perfect cone shattered, leaving a horseshoe-shaped crater yawning like an open wound. For months, life in the region was suffocated. Masks sold out, flights were grounded, and farmers scraped ash from their fields with shovels. The economy stalled. the nightmare did not end when the eruption stopped. Today, the blast zone around Mount St. Helens is a laboratory. Science study how life returns from nothing. Plants, animals, and forests clawing their way back from the ash. But the deeper legacy lies in memory, in the reminder that nature is not our playground. It's not tame. Mount St. Helens sleeps again, but scientists warn it will erupt again. Perhaps not tomorrow, perhaps not for decades, but the magma beneath it still moves, the mountain still breathes. You've been watching Nightmare Situations. If you liked what you saw tonight and would like to see more, then please do like, share and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And remember, sometimes reality is scarier than any nightmare. Thank you for watching.